Welcome back to Reddit Room. So, today we're diving into parenting. Let's get into it. How to help daughter get past childhood abuse. So, I've recently been working things out with my 16-year-old daughter. When she was around 5 or 6 years old, I started hitting her and said many things that I now regret over her grades, piano, etc. Before that, she was very extroverted and outgoing, but then she started to become extremely introverted and had a lot of trouble making friends and socializing. Her grades were awful, and she got bullied a lot at school. Now, we have a very competitive social circle, and everyone else's kids were extremely intelligent academic wise and constantly had all A pluses, while our daughter had C's and D's. Of course, none of the other parents hit their kids, which we now regret. We went through some of the things that really upset her, and here are the top reasons. One of the things she mentioned that really scared her was this. Once, in grade 3, she threatened to kill herself after a very bad math test. We were at my mom and dad's house, and I was very upset that she'd threatened to kill herself over nothing, so I gave her a pair of scissors and gave her two options. Either she killed herself, and then I'd kill myself after, or I'd kill her and kill myself after. Once again, I regret this. She also mentioned that I would chase her around the house with chopsticks or hit or yell at her in front of other parents and kids, which made her feel very embarrassed in front of the childhood friends she grew up with. Another instance was how she wasn't allowed to cry too much at home or complain about the bullying. In grade 4, some kids made racist remarks at her, and she came home crying and wishing they died and called them bitches. I didn't react in the best way and hit her for it. And she mentioned she had difficulty opening up to me afterwards about her problems. Finally, she thought our family was experiencing massive financial issues and a divorce. When she was maybe in grade 5 or so, my husband lost millions of dollars in a poorly thought out business venture. Understandably, I argued with him many times and unfortunately did throw some things while she was around. I threatened a divorce, and during this time, she spent a lot of time with the couple that owned a laundromat nearby, and she mentioned that sometimes she wished they were her parents instead. Another thing she's never really recovered from due to this experience is how she dresses very poorly and economizes as if though she were living on food stamps. When we initially talked about this, she mentioned she didn't like my attitude. I kept telling her I could atone for it with my death, and I did get quite emotional and broke down and started crying and telling her it was all my fault. She mentioned I sounded sarcastic and not at all sincere, and that it was tough how she had to comfort me instead, especially since she was the one who had went through all this. I'm not proud of it, but I get emotional whenever we try to have talks about this and lose my composure. She has a lot of difficulty making friends still. Most people assume she comes from a very poor and uncultured family because she constantly dresses in ratty clothing that looks like they came from a donation bin and is always very quiet, which is especially detrimental since she goes to a preppy private school. Neither she nor her brother are close with their father, who is constantly away on business or golfing trips, and they were both at some point in their lives raised by a nanny, which may have caused them to further alienate themselves from us. She prefers the company of animals over humans too, and this bothers me, and I have no idea how to separate her from her pets. When she's upset, she spends hours in the pet's room instead of talking with people, even though she's got severe allergies to her animals. It's also hurtful. Sometimes I feel like she loves her rabbit more than me. Since I've stopped hitting her, our relationship has improved somewhat, and so have her grades and her social life. But she's becoming increasingly rude and disobedient towards her father and me, often lashing out or having temper tantrums over the smallest things. She's also paranoid about people standing outside her line of sight and often skips school, screams when people enter her room, and tries to get them out as soon as possible, or has panic attacks, none of which had occurred while I'd been hitting her and yelling at her. I realized that I had made a mistake after her brother moved to another country, despite her father and I's displeasure, and we do not wish to lose another child. A psychologist diagnosed her with anxiety, depression, ADD, autism, a memory problem, and some other learning disorders. But she mentioned she didn't want to make a big deal and downplayed a lot of her issues in front of the psychologist for fear that it would affect her career in the future. I do admit I didn't take the diagnosis seriously at first. My husband and I didn't do any research and dismissed it as a way for the psychologist to make more money. But my daughter has been getting increasingly more agitated and often isolates herself in her room for many hours at a time, or had mental breakdowns or mentioned she wanted to commit suicide over math, which had never been her strongest subject. Thankfully, she passed and is no longer taking the subject. One thing that bothers me is how normal she acts around other people. She could definitely pass for a normal teenager now, although she was quite strange in her preteen years. However, at home, she's often a nightmare to deal with all her screaming and paranoia. She's also stopped playing the piano on the grounds that she had too many bad memories associated with it, and even when I try to coax her into it, she says she's uncomfortable playing, especially with people around. Can anyone provide advice on how to fix our relationship? Edit. She is extremely uncomfortable talking about it to a family counselor, so that's why we're resorting to the anonymity of the internet. Thanks for watching Reddit Room. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more. See you next time.